Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Perspective with Viv podcast. My name is Viv, and this is the show. Today's title is Healing with Plant Medicine, Art, and Radical Self-Acceptance with Morgan Boszilkov. Let me tell you about Morgan. Morgan is an Atlanta-based spiritual coach and artist. She connects people to love and the beauty within and all around. Her work fosters healing, self-discovery, and a deeper appreciation for life's natural beauty. Thank you for joining me on the podcast, Morgan. Hi.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you. So let's dive into the questions. My first question is, you describe your work as helping people find love, acceptance, and worthiness within, rather than from the outside world. What was the moment you realized that search begins inward?
That's a great question. When I was in the tumultuous time of my life, I was constantly looking for the things to fill the hole in my soul externally, right? I was following the recipe of life, get a good job, get married, have children. Like these were the things that I had bought into as my conditioning. And as all of those things came and went and didn't actually solve anything for me, my life crescendoed into this heavy darkness. And I nearly died. I had cancer. I was living in this chaotic suffering of trying to control the external world to get it to give me what I needed. And I got to the point where I was so desperate, I ended up looking to psychedelics to help solve some of the PTSD I was experiencing from cancer. Of all the things in my life, the idea of solving the stress around dying, possibly dying from my cancer coming back, seemed like the most achievable, right? Because I was in achievement phase. It seemed like the most achievable way to find some sort of peace in my life. And that first mushroom experience for me woke me up, and it gave me this inner knowing that it was an inner knowing, but it was like a message that I heard at the time. And it was, if I could let go of my guilt and shame, I could become light and love. That's when it started.
Thank you for sharing that. That's such a beautiful journey. I think what's beautiful about it is that while you were in that period of dark, you listened to the nudges to find a way into the light. And I'm so happy to hear that. So
Yes,
you're an
thank you.
artist. My pleasure. You're an artist, a coach, and plant medicine facilitator. That is so interesting. What thread weaves all of that together for you?
Well, being an artist is something that has always been this underlying current and theme in my life. It's just who I am. Like, it's the place where I go when I'm stressed. It's the place where I go when I'm happy. It's just this outlet of my soul's expression. And it's just never been able to be denied. Like, I have assigned it a lower place in my life in the past where I have devalued it and said, no, this is just a hobby, or I could never make this my profession, or I'm not an artist, and I was suffering from imposter syndrome. But deep down, there was always the drive to create. That was something that for me was my way of being in touch with my authentic self. Right. And so that authenticity and intuitive drive, and the drive is almost like it's part of it, but the intuitive hints, nudges, inner knowing that comes through art is something that I always trusted in myself, whereas I wasn't listening to it in all the other parts of my life. Right. So I would be in a relationship, and a relationship, the universe would be screaming, get out, But I wasn't listening because I was like, no, this is what I should do. This is what they should do. All of the intellectualization of the shoulds and the conditioning that I had internalized, those inner parents and the inner societal influences, those were keeping me from accessing my intuition and authenticity. But I was accessing those in my art. So moving just expanding, right? Like expanding that access to self and inner knowing into other parts of my life. I can see the parallels between the creativity that comes out in art with the creativity that life requires in terms of breaking outside the box of what we should do and starting to think of other ways to alchemize and approach daily life, where instead of getting angry with the person who cuts me off in the car, I can say there's another way
Hmm.
of thinking about this. There's another
I
way
love that.
to change this, right? Just in the same way that like we make a mistake on the canvas that only we know was a mistake in art, and then we turn that mistake into something beautiful because we are accepting what is and then dealing with
Hmm.
the reality, and say instead of saying that art stroke shouldn't be on the canvas. Well, it is, right? And now we're like doing Byron Katie's work of loving what is
Oh,
and
I love
looking at our
that.
judgments. So, and then the plant
Yes.
medicine facilitation was a certification that I received. And for me, plant medicine has been my initiation into the spiritual world and also
Hmm.
something that has helped me continue on my journey. So,
Oh,
that is also accessing the divine within the inner knowing and the authenticity.
beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me, especially because I can relate to certain aspects that you described, such as being an artist and how you don't listen to your intuition in the real world, but during the art, when we're creating, that's when our intuition is loud. That's when we hear. That's when we listen. That was my journey. That was my journey when I was growing as an artist. I found that so intriguing that I was completely intuitive with art, but in real life, I did not listen. In fact, I didn't see the relatability of intuition and real life, if that makes sense at the time. But art allows you to have that portal and avenue because after working with art for that long, it reached the point where I was like, no, my intuition shines in art. So let's put it in life. And I love how you've weaved all of that. You've also like been able to s- be initiated into spirituality through plant medicine because I've always been drawn to plant medicine more with herbs as opposed to psychedelics. But I've been interested. I did have a psychedelic experience once. It wasn't the best, but which is why I know that that's why it's good to have a practitioner or something
Right.
around, right? A controlled environment. So that leads me to my next question. What's your relationship like with ayahuasca?
So, my facilitation certification is with Psilocybin, but I have had over 4 experiences with ayahuasca. Actually, no. Gosh, no, I'm up to 12. So, I
12.
forgot. Yeah, because each each retreat that I go on has offered 4 nights of ayahuasca experience. So,
Wow.
yeah, and they build on each other in the most beautiful way, and also difficult, right? So, like, when in my own experience, um, it's not always easy or beautiful or, what I want, and I should say, very importantly, plant medicine is not for everyone, right? And, for me, my ayahuasca was gosh, it was amazing. Uh, the first retreat that I went on, I went from, like, the first night being faced with who I was in a lot of ways and having these inner realizations of who I had become and what my ego was like, from like my impatience to expecting others to solve problems for me, and my own mirror of that, of me solving problems for others. Like one of my first messages was, oh, I don't need other people to solve things for me. And oh, I don't need to solve things for my children, right? Like there are all these
Hmm.
realizations. I saw my impatience. And then as the week went on, I relived, if you will, like saw a early childhood core wound that I didn't remember as an adult. And the things that happened around remembering that memory and then reaching out to family members, I got to like relive the gaslighting that I experienced as a 2-year-old. And it shined such a beautiful light on the patterns in my life. And it was so difficult. And luckily, I had a lot of support and people to help me at the time. But I was like, oh my goodness, why is this happening? And I was so raw and open with the medicine still in me from 2 nights of the experience. And when I really got past the emotions and got into a more neutral place, I can remember going, wow, like I'm getting to see what it was like to have a really difficult experience, speak my truth, be shut down, not believed, not validated. And then how had I continued that pattern in the rest of my life? How did I choose my relationships throughout the rest of my life to continue the pattern of my inner knowing being muted or shut down or suppressed so that I could be attached to other people that I felt like I desperately wanted them to love me? And I was attracted to people who would gaslight me, because if I wasn't doing it for myself and I actually did stand up and say, hey, I don't like the way this feels, the people that I was attracted to would say, no, you're wrong. You know, you're the crazy one, or that isn't what I said, or, you know, all the gaslighting stuff. Right. So it was a difficult experience, but because I had the support that I needed during the ayahuasca retreat, I was able to move through all of the emotions, come to the realizations, and then beyond the retreat, integrating that into my daily life was amazing. And then the 4th night, I was reborn as a baby cow. I released so much suffering. Right, a baby cow. So it was an incredible weekend. And I came home with, or week, and I came home with self-knowledge, self-love, and this strength and empowerment that I had never had, because I had been tapped into the love from a mind, body, spirit experience, instead of just intellectualing the ideas of self-acceptance and self-forgiveness and all of those things. I actually lived it in the plant medicine, and remembering it and tapping back into that feeling in my daily life, I was more empowered in my decisions in my daily life.
Yeah, okay. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Very profound and very insightful.
Thank you.
My next question is, what is the difference between psychedelics and psilocybins? Or how do you pronounce it?
Psilocybin?
Psilocybin,
Is that
yes.
what you
What's the
said?
difference? Yes, please.
Well, psilocybin is a psychedelic chemical. I'm not sure, but it's a substance. It's a mushroom. It's psychedelic
Okay.
mushrooms.
Okay.
Yeah. So ayahuasca, psychedelic, psilocybin, there are others, but those are the 2 that I've had the most experience with. Recently, I went to Peru for an ayahuasca retreat and sat with the Shipibo tribe in coordination with a retreat there, their partners. And I also was called to experience bufo, which is a toad
A toad.
secretion.
The one that you lick? Is it the one you
No,
lick?
this one was like you know, right? I was not licking a toad, although I'm sure that's interesting. Right, I'm having visuals for people who are very artistic and visual, right? We go straight to the image of like licking a toad like a popsicle.
Yeah.
No, poor toads. This is a like a secretion, I guess, that comes from a gland that's dried and then it is smoked and
Wow.
yeah, through a device. And that was a crazy experience too.
No,
And healing.
Okay. You describing it really sounds like out of this world, honestly. But I'm so sorry. I think I'm confusing a bit. There's ayahuasca, but ayahuasca isn't a psilocybin, but they're both
No.
psychedelics.
Yes.
So, okay, ayahuasca is its own, psilocybin is its own, basically.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I understand now. So, going back to Peru, right? That's
Yeah.
where you went. That is amazing. First of all, because not only do you say it's a secretion of from a toad, it's a gland. They dry it. They pull out the secretion. Then you smoke it.
Yeah.
How do you smoke it? Okay, a device.
I know, this is so crazy, right? So, and I have to say that like I lived, and like some part of me is just laughing so hard because as a teenager, I did not go through a rebellious adolescence. I was such a goody two shoes prude that I never did any like illegal substances. And it was a sense of my own like egoic pride to be like, I don't do
And the
that.
good one.
And right. And now I'm like, I smoked toad, you know? So it's funny. So yeah. So what was it like? They had, I don't remember exactly because I was very nervous because I was like, I've never smoked anything like this before. What do I do? And they were so sweet because they gave me like, they were, the owner of the retreat actually did that ceremony with us after our ayahuasca. It was offered a few days during the week, this bufo. And so I did it on one of my last days of the retreat. And the owner, while I was getting ready, when he found out that I had never smoked anything like this before, he actually had one of his assistants go to their office and create like a certificate to say like, Morgan has had her first smoking experience. But it was like, yeah, they thought it was hilarious. But it was almost like a ball jar. It was like almost like a science lab looking jar that had a little straw coming out of it. And so he lit it on fire and put the lid on, I think, or maybe he heated the bottom of the beaker up. I'm not sure. But I like inhaled the smoke through the tube, through the straw. And one of my intentions going into the entire ayahuasca retreat, and we can go into plant medicine with intentions, whether we get them or not, is up to the divine like spirit, but the divine energy. But one of the things I wanted was some healing around my cancer and the loss of parts of my body. So I had triple negative breast cancer. And so I had a double mastectomy. I chose not to keep my nipples because that was so risky. I had a prophylactic radical hysterectomy to keep myself from getting ovarian cancer because I have the BRCA gene. On and on, right? So my body is not what it used to be. I mean, I love it. And I'm so grateful for this meat suit that's carrying me through life. And I hadn't had time to grieve the loss of it and what I had been through. So not knowing that's what I was getting into when I smoked this toad, and when I breathed in the bufo, what I immediately felt was first I saw, do you want me to tell you?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. So the first thing that I saw was like I was up almost like in the mountains. I imagine like one of those Japanese paintings where the clouds are covering the tops of the mountains. So I was in air looking at these clouds, and that lasted, it was very peaceful. And it was almost like telling me, like, you're safe. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because I was very, very nervous because I had heard all sorts of vocalizations from other people on Bufo earlier that week, people crying, people screaming. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really nervous. So the first thing I had was this piece. And then I started crying and like thanking my body for carrying me through my cancer journey. And I mourned the loss of the parts of myself, like the physical body. And then that kind of almost seems obvious with that intention, but I got a new download and my cancer was on the right side. And one of the things in my spiritual kind of journey that I've learned is that the right side of our bodies is connected to the masculine and the left side is connected to the feminine. So that could be like father side, mother side, masculine, feminine, and giving, receiving. And so I had my cancer on my right side. And when I went through my surgeries, I didn't just remove my right breast. I also removed the left. And it was kind of like this innocent bystander. And then also my ovaries and my uterus and my cervix and all of these parts that were sacrificed for this toxic manifestation of the painful suffering that my soul was here to experience on the masculine side. And it wasn't just me, it was generations of this pattern of abusive, narcissistic, toxic masculine energy and the feminine sacrificing
Mm.
themselves and enabling, right? And there's ego on both sides. This isn't a blame game, right? Like, I'm not judging. I'm just saying that, like, this is the pattern that kept showing up in our family. And what came to me without any expectation or intention was that feeling of like the feminine sacrificing itself for the toxic masculinity. And I just cried and did some energy work on myself and like moved things out of my body. I started doing yoga and wildly, like, I had no idea that my hip was totally like popped out of place. And I did the little thing where you make your legs into like a four and like pull your knee towards you. And my hip went boom and popped
Wow.
back in place. So yeah, it was very much so connected to my physical body, that experience.
Wow.
So yeah, you never know what you can get. The guy next to me had like a full body and spirit orgasm. So, you know, you never get what you
Wow.
want, you get what you need.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Wow.
yeah,
But
it
that was a
sounded like your
beautiful share.
experience was very different.
It was, but just to, shed light on what you shared, thank you for sharing that, first of all. That was very deep and profound and very meaningful and symbolic. And I totally understand the whole sacrifice. That hits me in my guts because I could understand where you were coming from and how you possibly felt for that faint moment. So thank you for sharing that, honestly. When I had my own experience, I'm pretty sure it was ayahuasca that we had. When I had my own experience, the person it wasn't under a regulated environment. You see, the person that organized everything got, I'd like to say, starry eyed and left us and wandered away while we were the person that started, the new ones, the newbies. She left us and I was just there, and she didn't weigh things well. So we had more than what we should have had as new people. She gave us 2 grams, and I think somebody was smart enough to say, "Let me start with 0.5." So she had 0.5, so she had like a smaller high, or her experience wasn't as strong as mine. It was like I was seeing things. It wasn't like a weird thing where I was going crazy. It was more like I was overwhelmed with what I was seeing. And there was a lot of crying for me.
Hmm.
Would I say it was healing? I'd say it was eye opening. I didn't feel changed at the end. I felt more like, I don't know. I felt like it was an off experience, but what I did like was that I was there with other ladies. And in that moment, they both held me and said, "We're here with you. We're here with you." And I felt like that was wonderful. And I hope that I didn't stop anyone's high from being good. You know what I'm saying? Because there I was crying and I usually don't cry. I'm not a crier. So it made sense for the tears to come out in that way from that experience. I did enjoy the things that I saw, but I know that it didn't last enough for me to feel like my life has changed. If anything, I was like, I'm not doing mushrooms.
Yeah, that's understandable. It is, I'm so sorry that you had that
Mm,
experience
thank you.
and it felt unsupported, because it's a perfect example of how preparation, support, integration, all of those things are so important for this sort of work. It's sacred. It's sacred work, and it's not to be taken
Yes,
lightly. Like, I can
so
laugh all I
true.
want, but it's really serious work.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, yeah. So, what do you mean when you say becoming a grasshopper on mushrooms? Tell us what that meant and how you integrated it back into your human life.
Yeah. So that night was in the middle of my facilitator training.
Mm,
And I had gone into that night with the request to the spiritual world to experience a past life, because other people had been experiencing past lives and I was feeling jealous and envious of other people's journeys. And so when I went in, I was shown, it was almost like I went through this galaxy, like I can see it now, and then I was shown that I was in this like tube, this soft, round, kind of like brown earth-like tube, and in tunnel, and in front of me there were two insects, and there was a grasshopper sitting like kind of on a bump in this tunnel, and I looked over, and they were like, "What's up?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness." Like inside, I said to myself, "Oh my goodness, I've asked to see a past life, and I'm a grasshopper?" And I was disappointed in that moment.
Hmm.
As soon as I had that thought, and like, and these are flashes. This is super fast. It was like in the tube, see them standing there. They say, "What's up?" I'm like, "What?" And then I was hit with this powerful question of, "I better than a grasshopper?" And I had done so much work at that point on my judgments, and judgments create separation. So this was just another way for me to become aware of my judgments and way of keeping myself separate from everything, because everything is connected. We are all one. And so many of my journeys have been shining a light on the parts of myself that keep me feeling separate, different, better than, worse than anybody else. So, my answer with my whole spirit and heart when it asked me, "Are you better than a grasshopper?" And I cried so hard because it was a release of the energy that I was holding
Hmm.
on to, that
Wow.
egoic judgment. And I said, "No, I am no better than a grasshopper. I am one with the grasshopper." And
Hmm.
I just released. And it was the same lesson that I had been getting so many nights that year. It's the same sort of in ceremony experience as when I saw myself as also my father. I am
Hmm.
also my mother. I am also my children. I am also that neighbor that I've judged. I am also my ex-husband. Like, I am also everyone. I am also Trump. Like, I started going into every judgment that I've ever had, and it showed them to me and reminded me I am also them because we are one. Yeah,
Wow.
and now integrating that into my daily life, between the plant medicine experiences and my work with Byron Katie's method of inquiring into our judgments and turning them around and looking at our own part and our own reaction, asking ourselves, is it true? How do I feel when I think that thought?
So true. Wow.
Yeah, it's it's noticing the thoughts. Like, first, it was noticing when I would have really big triggers, right? When I first
Hmm.
started this, I would get wrapped up in a story. I would be really upset about what someone else did, right? That they shouldn't be doing. That's in air quotes. And looking at my reaction because I didn't like the way I was feeling and going
Hmm.
through the process of looking at my judgments. At this point, I'm catching them when they are in thoughts. Usually I don't get all the way into a spinning spiral of emotional inner turmoil where I'm suffering like in anger or judgment or fear. Although I can still get there. Now it's more like, "Oh, that's a judgmental thought." And then I immediately send that person love. Like, I'll have this look at that and then I'm like, "I love you. I love you. I love you, person who's making me really late to my appointment, who's driving super duper slow in front of
Hmm.
me. I love the person who's angry at the grocery store,
Wow.
and just immediately noticing the judgment, releasing the judgment, and then falling back into love with life and what is.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, because judgment is something that actually clouds the way we see things. And, I was just discussing with someone on how everything is neutral, and that's something I'm trying to practice. And I do love the fact that on my journey now, I'm working with forgiveness and working with uncovering judgments, because judgment can be so harsh and it can really put people in a box. And I don't like to be put in a box, which is why I don't like to judge. Yes, we're human. It can come up, but it's about not identifying with it when it does come up, or unraveling it so that I can transmute it into love, just like you said. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, forgiveness and compassion, and it's all such good stuff.
Yeah,
I
it
love it.
is. So you're big on authenticity. Why do you
Yeah.
think being your real self, especially the messy parts, which is my best part, is essential for evolution?
Yes. When we're children, we deny our authentic selves, right?
So
Like
true.
we are this bush that we've pruned and said, this isn't of value, that isn't of value. And those branches like fall to the ground and we've lost touch with them. And they're still there. Like they're kind of like waiting to be picked back up and grafted back onto ourselves, the parts that we've
That's
rejected.
so true. Wow.
And, Gabor Mate, I love to,
He's good.
reflect back onto him.
He's
Yes,
so
you
good.
know, choosing attachment over authenticity. How often
Mm.
do we do that as children because it's our survival mode and then we carry that pattern into our adulthood and it stops working for us necessarily, right? Like our ego as children is developed so that we can learn to love ourselves as adults through the evolution process.
Oh.
Like, and my own forgiveness and compassion of the people who, the easy way to say it is the people who hurt me throughout my life were mirrors of the shadows of myself, right?
Mm.
They reflected back at me my unworthiness, my not enoughness, the parts of myself that I didn't love, they were just reflecting that back at me. And it had to get to the point where it was so awful to have it reflected back at me that I decided I couldn't take it anymore and something had to change, right? And the
Yes.
something that had to
Wow.
change was me
Yes.
because
It's when
changing
you
the world
change
around
that
me,
things.
yeah, changing the things around me never actually worked. And if it had, then I would have just lived in this like semi comfort my whole life and never really
Mm.
gotten into loving myself. I would have,
Yes.
as Carolyn Mace says, like when she talks about archetypes,
Mm-hmm.
she talks about the vampire archetype. And I'm like taking a deep breath as I say this because it's like, I don't really want to admit this, but it's true. And I think it's important to say out loud that my vampire archetype, and archetypes are neutral. There's no good or bad. Like anything else, like you said, everything's neutral. I was trying to feed off of everyone and everything around me to prove to myself that I was worthy and valuable
Oh,
and lovable
wow.
and all those things. And so if someone showed me some hint of acceptance for me, whether it was a friend or someone that I thought I was in love with, or a family member or a job or something outside of myself, I would latch onto it and suck it dry, right? Like I would vampire all of the love that I could get. And if it started to wane or they decided they, didn't want that, I would cling, desperately to a relationship to give me what I needed because I wasn't finding it within.
Mm.
And right. And so moving out of that pattern and realizing that it can be sourced internally. That's the lesson, the insourcing rather than the outsourcing of the
Yes.
love and the value.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. You speak often about how everyone is a mirror, like you just referenced. Can you explain how that idea can shift how we see conflict, judgment, or even love?
Yes. And the first word that comes to mind is gratitude
Ooh.
because, yeah, I know it's unexpected for like old Morgan, because I definitely wouldn't have gone to gratitude. I would have gone straight to victimhood with those things. But everything is an opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves and become more aware of ourselves. So when the world mirrors me back at myself, I am, after the initial effect that
Shock.
sometimes needs some, support from family or friends if it's something really big and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is hitting me really hard, right? Once I get to a neutral space, I can be grateful for the experience and say, okay, what do I get to learn about myself from this? Is this something that I have done? When have I done this thing? Right?
Mm.
Like, let's just say someone is talking about me and it's very triggering. And I get to ask myself, when have I spoken about another person in a negative way and judged them and then shared that judgment with someone else? When do I judge someone else in my head, right? Like, when we say like talking about someone else, we're all connected, whether we're speaking with our minds or with our voices. When we talk about someone else, it's felt. It's felt by them, it's felt by the whole, it's part of the collective energy. So, in this instance of being triggered by someone talking about me, I can use it as a mirror and say, when am I talking about people? Out loud or in my head? How often am I actually bringing compassion to other people's behavior and seeing myself and our shared humanity in their behavior? Or am I just in judgment and superiority, um, and that egoic response to the world? Um, and it can be anything. Someone cuts me off. When have I cut someone off in traffic?
Hmm.
And then
Wow. Just keep
it's
bringing
never
it back to
personal.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
never personal.
It's
It's
never
always just an
personal.
opportunity to learn about ourselves.
Yeah. And also, I'm now thinking also an opportunity to practice certain qualities, I guess. Like, for example, when you know you've done something before, you tend to have more compassion for who's doing it, that you experience them doing it to you, at least if you're looking at it from that perspective. And I like that. I like that because I'm not going to lie to you. Because of how hard I've experienced people being on me, I don't like to extend that harshness to other people. I could glitch a bit and have a human moment, yes. But I come back and I'm like, oh gosh, now I realize why I don't like having those moments. Because when I come back to my equilibrium, that's not who I am. I don't judge it, but I'm like, yeah, I don't like thinking that about people. I don't judging or putting something harsh on a person because you do feel it like you're doing it to yourself. So I like that you brought that up because sometimes I do want that separation. I do want people to be the bad ones. I do want them to be like, you did that to me. That's an issue. It's hard to balance all these theories and concepts. You know what I'm saying? Especially the one about mirrors. But, when you're in a good place, it is good you are able to be like, I see what this is telling me. And because I can look inside, I'm going to do the work. But I also love how when you've healed, your relationships reflect that. You start to see that you're attracting better people, friends, lovers, your relationship with your family is better. I love that because it's like a check-in that, look, this is where you're at in your life. Are you happy?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. And that's something that, I tend to be looking constantly for ways to improve, right? So I go immediately to the mirror of our shadows. But what you brought up is the fact that life is also the mirror of our light. And we can look for that, right? Instead of walking into a room, like we can walk into a party or a group of people, and if we're in victim mode, we're looking for the confirmation of what we already believe about ourselves in the negative, right? And we're
Yes.
looking for the rejection. We're looking for the
Hmm.
judgment. But if we come in with open eyes and we're looking for the reflection of our light, we're more likely to find someone who is actually shining that acceptance back at us because we're looking for it, right? Life will confirm what we believe about ourselves. And I know from my own experience that I can go to an event where there are 10 people. 9 of those people love me. One of them doesn't. In the past, I would walk away from that event completely focused on the one person who didn't like me. I'd be like, what did I say? What did I do? I knew they didn't like me, right? Like, how can I change this? Or what did I say? I didn't realize they didn't like me. Oh no, how can I fix it? Right? All the people pleasing survival skills as a child that I had developed would go into focusing on trying to get this one person to like me. And I would end up suffering, obsessing over the one negative person in the room. And now, right, the shift that has taken so much work and I still fall back into and notice that fear in myself. But if I can intentionally and consciously look for the love and focus on that and realize that whoever is reflecting negative energy at me, it's also a projection of themselves. And I don't have to take it personally, and focusing instead on the love that's being shared with me by the other people in the room. Or if none of them are like, loving me and sharing that, like, how can I set a boundary for myself and trust my intuition and leave the space, right? Because it doesn't feel right in the moment. Or if I
Yes.
can't
Yes.
leave, because that's part of our power, is setting boundaries. Or if I can't leave, or I don't feel like it's right to leave, and I just want to like sit with the emotions and use it as practice to allow the fears to flow through my body, and like maybe
Mm.
make my way into a
Wow.
bathroom. Let's just say it's a family gathering, right? And I'm just imagining I'm, at a family gathering and I don't feel like I can leave, but I'm having all of these emotions and all of these triggers. Maybe I just step into the bathroom for a moment and allow myself to sit with the emotions, to let them flow through my body without labeling or
Mm.
judging them,
Mm.
and just feel the sensations to let them flow through because they want to come up and out. And then emerging, knowing that I'm taking care of myself and that this was an opportunity for those energies to come through me so they're not being suppressed or denied. And love myself, right? Like when it comes down to it,
Wow.
we're just there to love ourselves.
Thank you for sharing that. That was so beautiful, the way you explained it. It's refreshing. Your message is very refreshing because it does call for deep, like self-reflection. It calls for you to sit with emotions. It calls for you to hold yourself accountable. And I think that people think self-love is all self-care and all that, taking care of yourself. It is, but real self-love also shows in you healing yourself, in you being able to hold yourself accountable, in you not thinking from the mind of a victim, in you thinking from a more empowered place, in you seeking to think positively about things. I love that you said so many things, like how you said, I love the person that's keeping me late. If we had a mindset like that, lives would be better. And immediately you said that, I was like, that I'm going to try that tomorrow. I'm going to try, oh, I love this person because I think that that's who I am naturally. I just find that it's really about what you choose to think about. Because when you said something about thinking and mindset, I said to myself that imagine if we're always seeking to plant positive thoughts, even if we didn't know what the true meaning behind something was. Imagine if we're choosing to plant positive thoughts in our body. Our body is like a garden and our minds are like seeds, or our mindset. So that those two things, they stay with me. And that leads me to my close to last question. What does insourcing mean in a world that constantly tells us to look outward for value or validation?
Yeah. That's the conditioning from our families, our religions, our society, just, whatever sort of energy that we've come in with, all that whole excuse me, that whole combination of egoic obsession with the external. It's just waiting to be alchemized. And alchemy is the shift from lead to gold, right? When we are able to take something that's heavy and feels like a burden, and maybe we've been carrying it and there's a story attached to it, and we shift that into something that we are grateful for and that we're learning from, and something that has brought us more self-awareness and connection to that authenticity, we can really start to be grateful for all of the ways that the external world is actually bringing us back to our inner selves and making life lighter so we don't have to carry the stories anymore. Insourcing is connecting with the divine within. It's connecting with the love. Yeah, the love. Like everything is love. All is love. So, in what ways can we connect with the love within? And there are so many ways to get there, right? And I would say that there's an infinite number of ways to get to the love within and the love that is all around, because we are all different. And so, for all the different ways that we're going through our lives, those are all the ways to get to love, because that's everyone's destiny. I believe everyone's destiny is to reach unconditional love for themselves and everything, because that's what this is all made of. Like everything is happening for us, not to us. And once we can start alchemizing life from that victimhood mindset of this is happening to me, right? The guy who's
Enough.
making me late, to this is happening for me, we move into a place of surrender and trust and faith. And I used to be an atheist, right? Like the word faith would never come out of my mouth, let alone surrender.
Wow.
But if I can let go of my expectation and control of a situation or other people and that external thing, if I can say, I don't know why this person is driving 10 miles per hour and I am going to be 10 minutes late to this appointment, but I trust. But I let go of any sort of illusion of control that I have. I can release the fears that are coming up in me, perhaps the anger that's coming up in me. I can notice them, right? We're back to the bathroom scene at the family function where we're allowing, we're taking a moment to go within, feel the feelings, say, I notice the fear and anger coming up. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to create a story around why this person is bad or wrong. I'm going to feel the feeling. I'm going to get out of my head, into the body. I'm going to trust the divine order of things, the divine timing, that this is happening for a reason. I don't know why. And surrender to the moment and bring myself back to being in acceptance, neutrality, and eventually love of what is happening. But that's like the levels of consciousness that David R. Hawkins talks about. He has a map of consciousness. And the bottom levels of consciousness are survival mode. It's all the fears, the angers, the helplessness, hopelessness. And I would say that I spent 40 years of my life in survival mode. So I'm not judging it. It's just something that is a phase. And as we connect with our inner selves and the love that's within, we move out of the fear into courage, because that is that shift from outsourcing to insourcing, right? Once we start having courage, we're actually looking to ourselves to make changes. And the way we get to courage is actually through anger, right? So like we move from being frozen to feeling, to being angry about something. And that anger drives us to have courage to change things and empower ourselves. We move into all of these higher activated levels of consciousness that are based on things like neutrality, acceptance, love, joy, bliss, right? Because we are surrendering and we're having faith and we're flowing with life instead of fighting life.
Wow, that's just a beautiful way to end this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing these beautiful, profound ways of thinking. Like, honestly, when you first came on the show and I saw you, I was like, wow, the vibe was different in the sense of you feel a bit like more elated or more, there's a word, but I can't find it. But let's say you're here, right? Like you feel more in tune with the beauty of life than the average person. You felt very high vibe. So listen to you speak and tell me, I can just like literally you feel like you really, really practice what it is that you shared in this episode. And it shows like when you speak and you sharing your perspective and you just existing, I can just feel that energy and that vibe. And that's very inspiring to me because it's like an example of what we can work towards, me and my listeners. So I want to say a big thank you to you for sharing your message with me. Now,
Thank you so much.
It's
I'm
my
just a
pleasure.
reflection of you, right? And can I take like 1 minute and say something about
Sure.
what you just said? Because life is a mirror, I truly believe that you can see that because that is you too, right? Otherwise, you would be triggered and be like, what is this lady talking about? How dare she question my judgments, right? Like, because that was old me. If someone said, Morgan, maybe you're stuck in victimhood, I would say, how dare, like, I would reject that because it was such an affront to the ego that I was clinging to so deeply. But like you said, when we got on, I was like, you said, your smile reminds me of my smile. And so we share that light, so I see that in you, and thank you
Thank you.
for holding such a beautiful space.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for your kind words. I feel the same way. I think our smiles do match. And when you were talking, I was saying to myself that, okay, so I see that this is where I'm headed. Like I'm on that journey already. So thank you. Thank you for affirming that, especially today, because today has been a day of so many emotions in a good way. I feel like I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm more human than I realize. I'm always like bypassing emotions and stuff like that. But today I sat with myself and I said, I feel, and because I feel so much, I'm going to allow myself to feel good and to see things from a good place. So I appreciate you. Now, I
Thank you.
just wanted to give a good outro to my listeners. So, Morgan here is proof that the sacred is never separate. It's already within us, waiting to be remembered. If you're feeling called to dive deeper into self love, soulful art, and the wisdom of plant medicine, visit morganbstudio.com to schedule a free 30-minute coaching call, explore Morgan's offerings, and download digital art freebies. Follow Morgan on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube. I'll share all of that in the links. And follow her to stay inspired on your own path of authenticity, enoughness, and transformation. The journey inward is the way home. Thank you, listeners. Until next time. Bye.